Does anyone else feel like a considerable amount of anxiety from that intro video? Does anyone else feel this tension between the amazing worship we just had and then that video? I do. I'm sitting back there and I'm like, oh, this is so lovely. I'm just kind of soaking it all in. And then I'm like, oh, that video. And that's kind of actually what we're going to talk about. Like, I now feel restless. I was restful for a second, and now I feel restless after seeing that. And all of a sudden, I've got this anxiety because I know tomorrow is coming. And tomorrow means that inbox is going to fill up. And tomorrow means that calendar that I was kind of like putting off for the weekend is now going to be right in my face. And I don't feel rested. I feel less. I feel like less. I feel restless. So I'm just to get an idea of who I'm talking to this morning. Raise your hand. We got 2 time changes, right? Like, first of all, actually, wait, pause. Way to go, us. You're here. You made it. You set your clocks back, or your phone automatically did it for you, but you made it. If you're online, it's probably because you forgot to set your clock back, but you still made it too. So can we just give ourselves like a round of applause? Because I feel like, when Jeremy was like, hey, Jen, March 13th, would you like to share? And I was like, sure. I just looked at my calendar and I thought, yeah, I don't have anything going on. And then someone's like, oh, cool, they asked you to share at daylight savings time. Oh, cool. So I made a commitment that I could have coffee up here, and that would at least be my contingency. So let me ask, do you prefer spring forward or fall back? If you're a spring forward person, this is your time. You love this time change. Show of hands. Okay. Someone goes, what? And if you are a fall back person, raise your hand. Yeah, you're my people. Fallback makes way more sense. And the reason it makes more sense is because this next question I'm going to ask you, which is, if you view this moment that we're in right now, like when you woke up this morning, you felt one of 2 ways, and this is kind of gauging you. You either felt like, I just lost an hour of sleep. Raise your hand if you're there. You just lost an hour of sleep. Or you're these people, and this is not judgment, I just don't understand, where you're like, I just gained an hour of daylight. Who's that? Raise your hand. Wow, the energy. I don't get it at all. I am definitely, I just lost an hour of sleep. Daylight savings time is something that's a little tricky for me. It'll probably take me a week, month, year to adjust. And once I finally get in that rhythm, I'm still going to have the same question of, am I actually more productive and more rested? When I began to research daylight savings time, it's actually kind of funny. It's literally, the irony of it that we think if we call it a different time or we set our clocks a different way, that it somehow changes what nature and the world is automatically doing anyway. But the reason it was actually kind of thought of and then mandated and then became actual federal things, is because we felt like it would help us feel more productive and rested. Well, that would make more sense. I did all this research, and it looked at how each little industry is impacted by daylight savings time. And I think what I found most ironic is that I don't know that we feel more rested, and then I don't know that productivity is really healthy, or we think we're actually productive. We used to be governed by the sun, right? Like you went to sleep when the sun went down, and you worked when the sun was out, right? And when we invented this amazing thing called electricity. And I love electricity. We're here. You got your coffee brewed because of electricity. We're getting together this morning. We got to hear worship through electricity, right? It's wonderful. But I'm asking myself, are we more productive? Are we more rested? Are we healthier now that rest is optional? When all I have to do is leave the lights on and I can keep working. How is that actually working out for us? I believe that unexamined productivity, looking at what we actually have going on and how we're actually managing these patterns of rest and work, I think it's not as productive as we think. Now, I want to kind of feel how we are currently right now. So grab your phones, and I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to see a website to visit on your phone. You're going to see a code to put in. And on this, we're going to look at the spectrum of where we are as a room, right? So if you feel rested, restful, full of rest, you're full of life and energy, you may have raised your hand because you just got that extra hour of daylight. Or are you feeling restless, drained, no energy, exhausted? As a few of those kind of come in. So this morning, what I want to do is, regardless of where you find yourself on this spectrum, I'm going to challenge us to see if we can move just even an inch closer to restful. Because I think that's actually how we're designed to work. but we've made it optional and we've confused it a little bit. And so I want to discuss the value of operating from a position of being rested and operating from a place of being full of rest versus being restless and having less to give and having less energy. Now, some of you may have heard of this concept of rest and work, and you may have heard it in church, especially if you grew up in Christian tradition. You might have heard the word Sabbath, right? This one day set aside for rest and worship. And what's funny about this day is that it's been taught about 1,000,001 different ways, right? Like, when does it start? When does it end? What can I do? What can I not do? And every tradition's kind of got its own way of teaching. But I want to kind of have a conversation about maybe what its actual intent is for. So we first hear about Sabbath in the creation story in Genesis, and then we later, and you're probably most familiar with it, with Exodus, right? Where it's number 4 in the 10 Commandments, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And so then, as in most things that God kind of says, hey, I think this is a good idea for you, then we take it and we run with it. And we make it rules and laws, and we get legalistic and make it mandates, and we miss the point of it. In fact, this tension around the word Sabbath is not new. It's actually a huge issue that Jesus had with the religious leaders of his time. They were constantly critiquing the way he observed the Sabbath, how he managed the Sabbath. I want to look at just a couple of scenes real quick. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. They're not supposed to be working. They're not supposed to be harvesting." And then just in the same chapter, just a little bit later, we see, going from that place, Jesus went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" "What are you doing, Jesus? You're supposed to have a day of rest and worship. You're not supposed to do anything. These are the rules. From sunup to sundown, this is what we can and cannot do." And Jesus meets every critique with essentially the same thing. He's like, you're missing the point. And he says it this way: the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And I think we still struggle with this a little bit. And this is just for me. I can't tell you how many times God has had to tell me, I don't need you to rest, Jen. I'm not like, and God doesn't need you to rest. Like, so God's not up there going like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to continue to let the planet spin and the universe function if you aren't rested. Like, he continues to go. He says, rest is for you. I model rest for you because you benefit from rest. You taking a day, a consistent, rhythmic, cyclical day every week to set aside for renewing yourself is for you. Sabbath is for you, not for God. And he starts in his whole creation. He starts with this rhythm. He gives us this example right out of the gate. I just kind of summarized Genesis 1 for us real quick. Day 1, we get earth and we get light. We get night. God saw the light and says, it's good. This is a good thing. Day 2, we get skies and waters. Day 3, land and seas and vegetation, and God says, this is good, and we keep going. Day 4, sun, moon, stars, and God says, this is good. Keep going. Birds and fish, and God saw that it was good. Day 6, other animals, God saw that it was good. He creates man and woman, and God says, look, I've seen everything I've made. I've spent 6 days working, and this is all very good. And then he gets to day 7. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. We've gone from good to holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. It is good, it is good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's so very, very good. But this is holy. If something is holy, it's set apart, it's protected, it's preserved, it's special, it's cherished, it's honored, it's different. And if I were to ask you, and I'm asking myself, do you have a day of the week that feels protected, preserved, set apart, that's good? That's like, this is different. This is a special moment in my week when I get renewed, when I rest from all the work that I've done. See, I think God actually worked for 6 days and then rests so that we can begin from a position of rest. I think Jesus kind of does the same thing with the cross. He says, I'm going to do this work so that you can operate from a position of rest, that you can be full of rest so that your relationships and all the work that you do is abundant and life-giving. And I think we miss this because we don't protect that time. In my home, I have some things that I don't really care about. They'll probably end up at Goodwill. I have a few things that I'll probably keep for a while. Maybe I'll end up giving them to my kids. But then I've got these few things, like my grandmother's wedding ring. And it's in a safe. It means something different. So how are you at protecting your time? And could it be that you're feeling a little restless because you're not protecting being well rested? And kind of to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you like my life in like a visual form. So if this is me, and I only have so much energy, right? And I am made to be in a relationship and to do work, and I'm going to pour out from what I have. So in my life, and your life's going to look different. Everybody's going to look different, so just picture what yours would look like. And also don't get caught up in like these glasses are specifically representative of things. I just went to the cabinets and got glasses that made me think of each facet of my life. So I've got a husband. If you chuckled, I know that you know. I've got 2 kids. Now, my kids are teenagers, but I felt like kids were best represented with sippy cups, right? So I've got a couple of kids. I have my parents. I've got some friends. Those of you that laughed, we should be friends. I've got work. I have a job, right? Coffee best represents that for me. I'm a part of church. So I get the privilege of volunteering at Inside Out. I have the opportunity to be a part of a couple of small groups, and this is important to me. I've also got this other thing. I don't really know what to call this other than, like if I'm honest, it's kind of like the numbing cup. So this is like my TikTok scroll, possibly being obsessed about Wordle, and then downloading apps that you can play Wordle all day. Netflix, this might be 1883, I don't know. I mean, everybody's different, but that's a cup too, right? And I actually dropped this, so I'm gonna have to sneak over here. And then I've got this cup. Now, your person's gonna be different, and I'm not gonna label this person out of fear they might be watching, but you've got a person like this in your life. I call them kind of sandpaper people. Like I think the Lord's like, hey, I'm gonna put this person in your life so that they irritate you. But it smooths out your rough edges. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. It could be, maybe it's an in-law, not mine. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's, hopefully it's no one in the room. Hopefully you're not nudging anybody, but they exist too, right? So I've got these people in my world. And the reality is, I can only do so much. But they all kind of vie for my attention and have certain demands in my life, right? So, like, I have 2 teenagers, and so I feel like, honestly, if I'm honest, out of these 3 relationships, they get a little more of my attention than my husband does. And it can be very easy in our marriage to become roommates because I end up focusing on parenting more than even, like, dating my husband. And then I have parents and they're far away, but there are seasons in which I may have to go into town. Or if you're a caregiver, this class could fill up pretty fast, right? I'm trying to make time for friends, even though it feels like there is never enough. If I'm being totally transparent, this cup probably gets the most of my attention. And then even though it's not necessarily right, and I wish I could change it, this person, I swear, and it just keeps going, and that is how life feels with them. And then anything that's left, I'm like, oh, I just want to watch 1883. And then I'm empty. And I've got nothing. And if we are honest, we could spend the whole morning just going back and forth with how life feels about this, right? Like sometimes work or school gets all of my attention and energy, and sometimes a friend has a trauma, so they get everything, and then sometimes I'm going to actually invest in my marriage, but then it feels like other things have to sacrifice, and I could drive myself crazy trying to balance out these cups. And I think it's an illusion to think that we're going to balance it. But I have a problem. I can only give from what I have. And I am finite. I only have so much I can do. But what would it look like? What could it look like if I was attached to a source that wasn't finite? Like if I was, say, attached to something I could just turn on when I need it or leave it on. Anybody know Gallagher? That wasn't a joke I told in the first service. I was like, yes, big age gap in this room. Okay. What if I could stay connected to something that didn't run out? To something that was always on and accessible to me? This is what rest is. This is the opportunity we have when we protect and guard our Sabbath or our rest. It's an opportunity to stay connected to the source, because if I allow this to fill me up, I'm essentially limitless. Because just like in creation, God saw all these very good things. It's good, it's good, it's good, but this is holy. And I need to tell us, this is also very good. I love my work. I love my friends. I love the community I'm a part of. But the only way this is going to stay good is if this stays holy. I can only give from what I have. And if I'm not staying connected to the source, this runs dry and so does this. In a particularly busy season of ministry in my life, I was kind of experiencing some burnout. And I had a friend say, Jen, did you ever wonder why the psalmist says, your cup runneth over? And I was like, do tell. And because I was grumpy. And he was like, well, it's because you're allowed to let people drink from the overflow in your life, from the saucer. But when you start letting the world or people drink from your cup, you're going to have a problem really quickly. Like, look at this image. This is what I'm supposed to be investing from. But when I allow life and relationships to drink from this, I'm going to quickly have a problem, because this doesn't exist without this. Now, if you're wondering, I don't know if like your cup's empty or full or where you fell on that spectrum, but let's just look at a list of things that might indicate for you that you maybe have an empty cup. Let's just look at this list. Has your passion faded? Do little things make you disproportionately emotional? Does everybody drain you? You're becoming increasingly cynical. You can't think straight. Your productivity is dropping. You're self-medicating. This cup is just all that matters. At the end of the day, you have to come home and zone out to things that I think we think and we pretend are going to fill us up, but they don't, and we kind of know it, and we end up feeling empty. And that's an important distinction. There's a difference in being tired and empty. Tired is good, especially because all this stuff is so good. Investing time in your kids is so good. And you may be tired. You got little ones and you're running around, you're spending time with them, you're taking them outside and you're playing. You come in, you're like, geez, I'm tired. That's a good thing. Empty is different. When you're feeling productive at work and you understand the way that your work impacts others and you see the value and the purpose behind your work, and you come home from a day of work and you're tired, that can be a good tired. That's different than empty. I considered really just sharing with you all morning all of the different pieces of information and the data behind the importance of the quality of rest in your life. And it wouldn't take much. I could fill pages to convince you that there are two things that determine your quality of life and longevity of life. In every research project you're going to find, it's going to come down to about two things. And it's going to be the quality of your rest and the quality of your relationships. Look at research on happiness. What do happy people have? They rest well and they have healthy relationships. People that live the longest, they're like, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's diet, maybe it's that. And some of those factors kind of bubble up to the surface, but at the end of the day, it's quality of relationships and rest. So if you feel restless, can you afford not to move toward being restful? Can these relationships afford for you not to protect, preserve, and guard that time? We just finished a series on prayer where Buck talked about taking an intentional time for spiritual development. And he was focused on prayer, but that's kind of still what we're talking about. He was trying to give us handles on how prayer doesn't have to be a mystery, how we can be real and vulnerable before God. Imagine if you protected a day where you took a day to be real and vulnerable before God and your family and just to renew and refresh yourself. So how do we do that? We're going to look at a few real simple things. One, I just want to reframe the way that we think about the word rest. One, you're going to have to take an honest evaluation of your time. I can't do this for you. I don't know what you can and can't do or what you have and what you don't have on your plate. But you do. You know when this cup is too full. You know when you're investing in this cup because you're avoiding this cup. Or you know when these cups are taking on too much and this cup is ignored. Only you know your time. But can you be honest about it? Because some of you in here are feeling this already. Oh, she's going to tell me to not do things. She's going to tell me to say no and then be at church all day on Sunday and just sing for 12 hours straight. No one wants that for a whole variety of reasons, right? But that's not what I'm saying. This may be a starting point for you where you're in community and you're learning and you're taking some intentional time to develop spiritually, but it's not about do more or do less. That's the other thing is when we think of rest, we're like, oh, and this was a trend for a while. For a couple of years, I felt like every Christian author was writing specifically to Christian women about doing less. Every book I pick up was like, say no, only say no. And honestly, it just bothers me because it's not about saying no. It's not about doing less. It's about doing the right things. It's not about taking stuff off your plate. It's having the correct things on your plate. And the only way you're going to know what you actually need on your plate versus what you don't is asking the source. Is taking that time to think, to look at things honestly. Your yes and your no have equal power. No isn't some magical word. Yes is also equally powerful. So figuring out your priorities is the goal. It's not doing less or doing more. It's knowing what you should do. It's also recognizing your capacity. Different seasons of life will have you with a different level of capacity, right? Some seasons of life, you'll feel like you've got a saucer, a teeny tiny, just a little tiny plate. You can't handle much on it. Maybe it's because you're a caregiver. Maybe it's because you're in a season of grief or you're trying to unpack and process a trauma. Maybe you just have, some of my friends that have really little ones, I call them littles, the little kids, that is exhausting. That is a season of life when you are trying to survive poops and throw up. Hang in there. But you will have a lot more capacity later for some different things. It doesn't mean you shouldn't still stay connected to the source and carve out time. But the reality is, I remember my husband and I, we were the first in our friend group to have kids. And our friends were like, what happened to you? I'm like, I don't know. So, but now I don't have kids. So I'm like, have fun, ladies, with your little ones. You have different seasons. You can't always control the seasons of life that you end up with. You can control carving out intentional time, though, no matter what season. But understand, it's not always going to look the same. You won't always feel like you need it, right? You'll convince yourself. You're like, well, I took a vacation last year, so I should be good. But you need to develop a rhythm. I'm going to suggest a weekly rhythm of protected time to rest. Right? And when you feel like you don't need it, the best example I have is I have a mentor in my life. I've had her since I was 29. We've been together for a long time. A few years ago, her son turned 36 and ended up dying of cancer. And as I walked with her through that, she was like, I just can't pray. I can't talk to God right now. For, as you can imagine, a lot of different reasons, right? But I said, well, even just start with that. Just say that. I can't talk to you right now. And she went home and she said, I can't do this thing. I know I'm supposed to wake up and have my time with you, and I just can't. And she said she felt like God said, that's why we've been doing it all these years before. You don't have to talk to me today because we've built up a storehouse. I've been building something up in your life. You are going to have the tendency to let the world, your calendar, your work, all these things invade your calendar and your time. But if you protect that time, you will build up a storehouse because there will be a time when life gets crazy. The other thing you need to factor in is your personality. Some of us rest way better than others, right? You probably just nudged somebody. Some of you are like, I don't feel obligated to do much anything but what I feel like doing. I envy all those personalities. There are only a few of them, but I love it. But others, like me, you always have a list of things that need to get done. You live on a list. You make lists about your lists, right? And so you probably need to pay more attention to protecting that time than others. The other thing you're going to have to do is give yourself permission to rest. Allow yourself to take a day. Give yourself permission to get uncomfortable. People will be uncomfortable with what you choose to do, and you might be uncomfortable with being still, but give yourself permission. The other thing is it needs to look different from your daily routine. So if you sit at a computer all day, you need to get up and get outside. For your day, you need to take a walk. Get away from the screen for a second. When I think about like the Old Testament and I hear all this stuff about like Sabbath, I'm like, for them, it was a lot of physical labor. And when you work like that, because some of us do, you know that your body needs to rest. You can drive your body into the ground if you aren't careful and you aren't resting. But it may look different for you now, right? Like we live in kind of a different time. Those of you that have physical labor all week may need to find a quiet corner in your room and just sit. Those of you that are in front of a computer will probably need to get out. If you're around kids all day, you may need to say, hey, I need someone to come sit over here for just 4 hours so I can just be. Whatever your season is, it needs to look a little different from the things that you do 5 or 6 days a week. It does need to have a regular rhythm. Again, that's that building up that storehouse, right? This is not a vacation, right? We kind of think this vacation covers this. Oh, I'll just, every 6 months, I'll take a week off. Like anybody going out of town for spring break coming up this week, right? So I'm going out of town. I'll leave Wednesday. I'm going to be gone for 4 days. 4 days a year does not fill this up. It doesn't work. But we think if we work and we work and we work and we grind and we just keep at it, and we'll finally get that cruise, we finally get that vacation, or we finally check that thing off our bucket list, that it's somehow going to fill us up. And I think those breaks and those vacations are super important. Those experiences are so valuable, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about protecting a set-aside time every week to be renewed and refreshed. Another thing to think about is what gives you energy? Like ask someone that's in relationship with you. Ask a spouse or your kids or your family or even your coworkers, like, what do you see me do that just makes me light up? And if it's make lists, then you can, that's another conversation. But like, what is it you see me do that I just get so excited about getting to be a part of that? Find out what gives you energy and then make a commitment to doing those things, right? To setting aside that time, to making it consistent, to making it different from your daily routine. So let's talk about some things we can do like today, right? Like, so we're reframing how we see rest. It's not necessarily sleep. It's about doing something restorative, something that gives us energy. It needs to have a rhythm to it, right? But what can we do today? So the first thing I'm going to suggest, and I think in the first service, I had to brace them for it, is I'm going to actually suggest you take your work email off your phone. I think some people just left. So I was sitting, we were having an event here actually, and I was sitting with my community group, and we were talking about this concept, and this person was sharing how just getting her work email off her phone made such a huge difference in her world. And immediately I experienced like panic. I was like, well, how will they get in touch with me? What will life look like if I don't see that red dot every day? Will I feel like I'm productive? So I didn't take it off my phone, I'm going to be honest. But what I did is I moved it from the home screen so that it isn't at least staring me in my face right in the beginning. Like, I don't know what you're going to need to do, but you need to probably do a little something to move a little more toward that restful end of the spectrum, right? So maybe getting your work email off your phone is helpful. Maybe finding a non-negotiable time on your calendar. You have a set-aside time, and nothing is allowed to interrupt that. You mark that on your calendar. And this is another thing that you're going to have to be able to do is to then make an announcement that you marked that time on your calendar. You may have to post it, tell it to the world, tell it to your family. Hey, too many of us are operating and we're just going and going and going, and we're not having the conversation primarily probably with this cup that we need to have of, hey, I am empty. I need help carving aside time. And then we need to come back and say, hey, younger people, my teenagers, there's nothing wrong. One of the best things I think I ever did is start with my family when I was coming in from work and I had a particularly draining day, is just text them, I'm coming in, it's not good. And I love you, and no matter what happens, once I walk in that door, I just want to go ahead and pre-apologize, right? But it kind of set a tone. And what I noticed is in my family, if I can tell them where I actually am, they want to be a part of helping me. They don't want to add, but what I do is I just keep going and going and going, and then they irritate me, and then they irritate me until, well, all I got is this, and then this person pops in, whatever, right? I mean, and we don't communicate. We don't tell them this is what I need. We also need to find consistent time for just depth, right? Like, so I know it can be very easy, again, like it's not about taking a nap, and although some of us do need a nap, and I think that can be valuable, but it's not just about sleep. It's about doing something restorative. So for you, maybe that is Sunday morning. Maybe this is your time for spiritual depth. There's also community groups you can be a part of, studies you can do. You may want to go find a spiritual director or a mentor or a counselor, someone that can look at you and your unique design and say, hey, you need rest, and this is what rest could look like for you. You know, and they know you well enough to know when you're trying to cheat it, when you're not treating it as holy. Use technology to your advantage. Block off time on your calendar. You know, you have this thing on your phone called Do Not Disturb. You can also you can set up your email so that you get an auto reply. You tell people, I mean, what does that look like? What would it look like? What message would it send to just the world in general if we said, hey, taking a day of rest? People are like, okay. But we're terrified of that, right? We can't seem lazy. We can't seem unproductive. None of this flows well if this isn't full. And if technology can't be useful to you in blocking off time, well, then get rid of technology for a minute. What would it look like to give your phone to somebody? Hold this for 6 hours. Whatever number of hours I need to get to give you anxiety is probably the indicator. If I said an hour, but the other day I left my house without my phone and was like, what is going to happen to me? I was going to Walmart. I'm like really, really close. And I had a moment, right? That should be indicating something to me. It doesn't mean that phones are bad, technology is bad, or TV is bad. It's none of that. It's none of that. If I'm also protecting this time, if I'm also making sure that I am preserving, staying connected to the source, and not trying to operate out of my own, right? Like out of my own finite resources. So what does that look like for you? You know, I think it can look a bunch of different ways, and I think you've got to figure out what you need to do. Let's go back to that Mentimeter. If you know where you landed. Out of all the things we've talked about this morning, what is something you could do to move yourself just one notch closer to restful? That you could actually make the Sabbath holy. And like Jesus talked about, not because it was a bunch of rules of do's and don'ts, but because it was so valuable to you to stay truly full that people could operate and come up and use your overflow and drink out of your saucer and not your cup. What would God whisper in your ear right now about your level of restlessness or restfulness? What is something you could give up? Something you could protect? Something you could shift in your schedule and your calendar and your rhythm that would give you the opportunity to be more restful? I think that's the goal. Sabbath wasn't made, man wasn't made for the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for the man. Rest is for you. It's a gift. And God says, I did all the stuff I did, and then I rested and called it holy so that you would start from that position. It's an opportunity. If you want these things to grow well, it has to start here. Just like soil and nature, if I want anything to flourish, the quality of nourishment matters, right? If I want something to grow, if you want these relationships to grow and thrive, you're going to have to protect your time with God. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that you worked and worked and worked and worked and rested so that we might start from a position of rest. So that we could offer to all those around us, all of our relationships and our work and all the things that we put our hands to do could become a part of our overflow. That they wouldn't drain us, but that it would be a joy to be able to show up fully as ourselves because you have filled us up. God, each of us is different, and you know exactly what each of us needs to move just a little closer to restful, to operating from a position of rest and overflow, so that we can be our very best in all these dynamics that you've placed before us. God, open our eyes to that. Help us to be honest about that, and help us to have the courage to make some changes and to declare those times and that moment in our week as holy. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys so much. Go be rested.